Hello and welcome to another lesson here at English Vids. My name's Anthony and I'm going to teach you a grammar structure today. Let's have a look at the structure and the meaning. Grammar structure and meaning. As comparisons. Use as comparisons to talk about how similar or different things are. As comparisons are really useful for showing the similarity or differences between two things. Now the two things can be anything you can think of. It could be food, could be a building, could be clothing, it could be anything at all. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples and show you the structure so that it becomes clearer to you. So we often add an adjective in the middle. So we've got as, adjective, as. And either side we add our objects, the things we're talking about. So here's an example. The buildings in London are much smaller than the buildings in New York. Now I'm going to compare the two buildings in London and New York. So New York buildings are up here and London's buildings are down here. They're quite low. So I can say the buildings in London are not as tall as the buildings in New York. Notice I've used the as comparison. The buildings in London are not as tall as the buildings in New York. And I've used the adjective tall in the middle. As tall as. Now let's look at another difference between the buildings in New York and the buildings in London. The buildings in London are quite old. The buildings in New York are relatively modern. So I can say the buildings in London are not as modern as the buildings in New York. You can switch it as well. I could say the buildings in New York are not as old as the buildings in London. So notice the structure, as old as. And I've used the negative before it, not as old as the buildings in London. That's showing the difference between two things. Now let's show some similarities. Let's take the buildings in New York and London again. Now I like both of these cities. I think the architecture in both cities is fantastic. So they're similar in that sense. So if I visit New York, I can say, wow, the architecture here is as great as the architecture in London. Notice the structure again. The architecture here is as great as the architecture in London. Here I haven't used a negative because I want to show the similarities. And I'm saying they're equal. The architecture in this city is equal to the architecture in this city. Now let's go through a few examples on the screen so that everything becomes much clearer. We'll talk about these examples as we go through them. They are planning on creating a movie adaptation of this book. I really hope the movie is as good as the book. This person is reading a book. Now, he likes the book. He thinks it's fantastic. And they're planning on creating a movie adaptation of the book. So they're going to make a movie about the book. And this person really hopes that the movie is as good as the book. So what he's trying to say is, I like the book. The book is fantastic. I hope the movie is equal to the book. I hope it is fantastic, just like the book. So he wants them to be similar. He's saying, I really hope the movie is as good as the book. I hope it's the same level of awesomeness as the book. People say this restaurant is the best Italian place in town, but it isn't as nice as the restaurant we visited last week. Most people are saying that this Italian restaurant is fantastic, it's excellent. But this person doesn't think so. She thinks that the Italian restaurant they visited last week, the other one, is better. So she used the as comparison to say, this Italian restaurant isn't as nice as the other Italian restaurant. So she's used a negative in front of the as comparison, and she's put nice, the adjective nice, in the middle. So this restaurant isn't as nice as the other one. What she's saying is the other one is nice. This one we're in now is not as nice. So she's showing the difference between the two. I can't believe how expensive your jumper was. Mine looks exactly the same, and it was twice as cheap as yours. This structure is slightly different to the ones we've just looked at. Notice the word twice has been used before the as comparison. Now the word twice here is an adverb. We can add adverbs like this before the comparison to make it stronger or weaker, so it modifies the as comparison. In this case, it's twice as cheap as yours. So they're comparing jumpers. This person said, I can't believe how expensive your jumper was. Mine looks exactly the same as yours, but mine was twice as cheap as yours. So if your jumper cost $100, mine is twice as cheap. That means mine only cost $50. So using the as comparison in this way shows the difference in price between the two jumpers. So our jumpers look the same, but mine was twice as cheap as your jumper. We visited Prague last month and were so impressed with the city. It's as beautiful as any city I've ever visited. This person really loves the city Prague. She said it's as beautiful as any city I've ever visited. So we can guess that this person has traveled a lot in her time. She's visited many cities around the world, beautiful cities, historic cities, amazing cities, interesting cities, and she's saying that Prague is as beautiful as any city I've ever visited. So if a city is up here, it's number one. She's putting Prague on the same level as any other city, just as beautiful. So she's saying that Prague is so beautiful, so pretty that it's up here on my list of beautiful cities. She's used the adjective beautiful in between the as comparison, and she's showing that Prague is equal to any other city up here because she's used the positive. It is as beautiful as any city I've ever visited. So she's comparing Prague with all the other cities, and she's saying that all these beautiful cities are equal to Prague. They're equally as beautiful. Now let's start thinking more about this grammar structure and getting you to use it in your written and spoken English. Let's start thinking about it now. Compare two types of food. So choose two types of food. It could be pizza and spaghetti. It could be cake and ice cream. It could be curry and sushi. Which one is more delicious? Tasty, salty, colorful, sweet, or flavorsome? Use one of these adjectives to show how they are different. For example, pizza isn't as delicious as curry. Spaghetti bolognese isn't as colorful as sushi. Burgers bought from a fast food restaurant aren't as flavorsome as home-cooked burgers. So that's showing the difference between the two types of food. Now talk about how they are similar. For example, sushi is as tasty as curry. Curry can be as colorful as sushi. Chocolate cake is as sweet as ice cream. Use the as comparison to construct a sentence to show the similarities or differences between the two foods. Write your sentence in the comments section below. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to hit the like button and leave a comment below. I'll do my best to respond to your comment and correct any sentences that you write. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.